Yes. All right, Joe, I'll let you take it away.
No, it's being recorded. I guess I should watch what I say, but I never watch what I say. So who's that? Before we get started, my name is Joe Guadagno. I am, as Nan said, with Rocket Mortgage. I am what we call a director. I lead a bunch of teams here in information technology. It's my pleasure to introduce J.R. Sloan, our state, or at least for those of you in Arizona, at least, Chief Information Officer. So welcome, JR. How are you doing today besides being back-to-back meetings all day?
I'm doing good. Actually, this is the highlight of the day. I think it's a great opportunity. I'm excited to talk with everyone that's here and talk about, I think, this whole externship program. I think one of the key things, I don't care who you talk to that's in technology or frankly, probably any part of a business, if you're trying to hire staff, staff is like number one. How do we find the right talent? How do we retain the right talent? How do we help the talent that's available, find their passion and connect with, what they want to do next. And I guess, going in, understanding that, you may not be ready for that sort of, life commitment. There the days of, hey, you're going to go to work for the government and spend your entire career there. Okay, there's still an opportunity for those of you that want to look at that. And frankly, if you came to me and wanted to talk about that, I'd be saying, okay, let's talk about where you're going to start. But the position that you start in, the organization you start with at the state is not going to be the one that you're going to end up with long term, right? I want to talk to you about how you move and how you grow. And you might find a place along the way because there's so many different things that the state does in terms of services that we deliver and the types of organizations. That you'll probably find something in there that connects with your passion, and that might be where you want to spend an extended period. But there's also the opportunity to come do great things for a while, move on to the next step in your career journey, and perhaps have a great experience at the state and then want to come back later, right? We can, as we go through the conversation, I'll touch on some of the things that I think, may make the state a good fit for you in terms of, we'll say work-life balance and some of the things we've adopted. We were, maybe even forced to adopt through the pandemic, and where some of the, I think, neat opportunities lie for the state of Arizona. And I will say I sat on the other side. I was in the private sector for a long period and came to the state and it was like, oh, I don't know, that's, government is like the last place I think I ever want to go. And what I found when I got to the state was a lot of, people that were smart, they were passionate. And I found real meaning in the work that I do at the state. And so that's what I hope to maybe share a little bit and communicate with you today.
Oh, there was a lot. You took up almost all the answers to my questions before I even answered. Before we go deep into the different roles and everything, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, what's your day-to-days? I mean, we all have meetings, but
sure,
without sharing any secrets or government secrets, let's hear about the day in the life of JR.
Sure. So for the state of Arizona, the state of Arizona is just think about it as like a large multi-branched corporation with lots of different diversified business units. There are 120 plus agencies, boards, and commissions that make up the structure of the state of Arizona. And when you think about, government, it's everything from driver's licenses. Everyone's probably gone through the motor vehicle division. You've got the Department of Economic Security with a lot of human services that are offered through there. We have Access that handles Medicare, Medicaid, and all of the healthcare exchange. We've got Department of Public Safety. We've got the Registrar of Contractors. We've got all kinds of occupational professional licensing boards. We've got the Department of Environmental Quality. We've got the Department of Education. We've got, lots, okay? I'll stop going down the list. But I mean, there's lots of different aspects that we interface with as residents and as citizens of the state of Arizona, various aspects of government. And there's a group that's focused on it. We have organizations as large as 7,000 to 10,000 employees in one organization. down to, I've got, there's one, it's the Navigable Streams Division is one guy. So if you know Arizona, like navigable stream sounds like an oxymoron. It's not. There is a guy who's actually in charge of that, but he's a one-man show. And so when you think about that kind of breadth, now I'll talk about where I sit in that. So I sit in the Department of Administration. We act as an administration or administrative arm for the Office of the Governor. We run an IT service bureau. So I have a set of services that I'm responsible for. Agencies may or may not choose to use my services. So basically I have to, somewhat compete for their business. Therefore, that keeps us very customer service oriented. We have responsibility for policies, procedures, and standards. Probably most organizations will have some level of policy, but policy is a way that government, enacts, things that don't need to go into statute, might need a little more flexibility, might be changing. So when you think about some of the policies that we have responsibility for, it's things like, okay, what's the acceptable use policy for how you use state, computing equipment, the network, and the applications. Policies around, I have a policy in place that talks about our utilization of, cloud computing. It basically says, if you are interested in, running an application, the first place I want you to look is to see if there's a cloud service available, preferably a software as a service solution. Or you can start going down the stack, but we're going to try and put things in the cloud first. And the last choice would be to put it into one of our co-located data centers. Over the past few years, we've consolidated 85 data centers that were in the state, and we've consolidated that and moved more than 2,500 applications to the cloud. Now, when I sit in the Department of Administration, those other agencies, they have a certain degree of autonomy. They have businesses that I don't understand top to bottom, but I serve them. They are my customers, and they ultimately are directly serving citizens. And so my job is to bring to them enterprise services that they can take advantage of. So I run the contracts for things like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. We also have stood up the enterprise security operations for the state. That now has moved officially over to the Department of Homeland Security, but that team used to sit in my department. What's exciting about that is that now cybersecurity in the state of Arizona has been elevated to a cabinet level agency. So the director of the Department of Homeland Security now sits in the meetings with the governor to talk about the state of cybersecurity in the state. That's exciting. It's getting dedicated funding, and that team, which we now refer to as Cyber Command, which is one of the cooler names of places you can work in the state, it's phenomenal that they are leading the cybersecurity efforts I'll say as point for the state. But we have cybersecurity professionals in many of the agencies as well. Some of the agencies are so small that they don't have dedicated IT staff or dedicated security professionals, and they may consume a lot of services from my organization. But others will have, I'll say levels of personnel and skills that are appropriate to their size. And then, my organization will act as somewhat of a backstop for services that they may need. So that's kind of where I sit in the state. There's a number of other CIOs at the agency level, so IT leaders and chief information officers at the agency level. I work with them. I meet with them regularly, seek to understand what are the problems that they're trying to address, how are they trying to implement strategies for their organization to meet their mission. And then frankly, my strategies are about supporting their strategies from an enterprise technology perspective.
Cool. So that sounds like an awful lot. And we have a bunch of people that are looking to get in the field. Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of like how you got into the field?
So I'll start with the punchline first, which was it's about people, right? It's about the relationships you build over the course of your career and the connections that you make. So the way I ended up at the state was actually a couple of guys that worked for me when I was in the private sector. One of them was a product manager that worked for me, and another one actually ran marketing for me. And this is when I was working at an enterprise software company where I was responsible for both product management and marketing. That got me, I'll say, fairly deep in technology. I interfaced with the software development groups. That's where I learned to do, technology to business translation. That's a skill that I recommend that, if you don't have it, it will serve you well. To be able to take what's happening from a technology perspective, explain that to a business user and help them understand, like, why is that important, or how does this support them in their needs, or to hear the business user say, this is my problem statement, right? And for you to be able to translate that into a technical solution, right? That is a skill that will serve you well. So being able to do that, think on both sides. In terms of being able to, I'll say in my role, it's critical. I have to be able to interface with other technology leaders. I have to understand what's happening within technology within my own organization. I have to be able to explain to other agency directors, as well as governor's office leadership, what is happening and why, where we should make investments, why those investments are worthwhile, how they will benefit the state. So those are things where, again, I recommend that those are skills that you look to build over the course of your career. The guys that worked for me, one of them became the CIO and one of them was his deputy. And they actually came to me, this was in 2013, and asked if I would come and run a program. And so I started at the state of Arizona in 2013, running the digital government program. And again, that's what it was. I thought was a pretty cool title to take on, thinking, man, I bet that there's a lot to do in terms of digitizing government. And I got to step in and do a couple of things. One was I took on a set of applications that was run under a contract, was sort of like a black box to the state. And we needed to break it apart and say, we want to undertake these applications, and I want to engage a third-party provider to help run those applications for me. I want to take the infrastructure back in-house, and I will manage the infrastructure. I need to create from the ground up a payment processing solution to serve these applications. And oh yes, we also need to stand up a new set of websites and a website service for the state.
And we need it next week, right?
Well, I had about 6 months, but I was starting at the contract stage. So,
even better, right?
So it was, but again, a lot of good work, a lot of good people. We ended up choosing Drupal as our website platform. We now run that in Pantheon, which is hosted in AWS. As leading up to that, before we actually chose Pantheon as the service, we actually stood up an end-to-end, continuous integration DevOps solution that would allow us to make changes to our core websites and their templates, and then it was automatically loading, testing, and then deploying that into production on an hourly basis. So we could basically iterate through changes every hour if we needed to. But frequently, we did that, I'll say, and early on, lots of changes going through quickly. But as it got more stable, we had things where we'd go through regular change windows and change cycles. But we had that all also in a full GitHub repository. We've actually shared that with other states, and some other states have built on top of it. We ultimately moved that out to Pantheon as a service provider, where, and these are some of the decisions and things that I think about on a regular basis, which is, where do I uniquely add value by doing this as a state employee, versus are there partners that I can work with where I can move further up the stack of technology and be able to buy the things that I need and not have to maintain it all myself.
Yeah, that's smart. I want to touch on something you brought up because, like it or not, I've been in the private sector for my whole career, and the government sector has a stigma to it that people don't work, it's always slow, everything takes forever. But you just started talking about things that most uh, private sectors want to do. Like, I would love for my team to be able to commit code, run unit tests, and deploy every time they do it, rather than scheduling a change window on Tuesdays or Thursdays or what have you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about like the culture there that allows you to be able to do that, or dispel some of those myths that we have that the government is slow and bureaucratic and everything takes forever.
Well, so one of the things to know coming in, and I'll say from a culture standpoint, I would say culture varies and is unique to each organization. One of the things that the current administration under Governor Ducey, he brought in a lean management system. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with lean or terms like Six Sigma, but think of it as just this is a continuous improvement process. And so by putting that lean management system in place, we call it the Arizona Management System. One of the things that it has done from a cultural standpoint is it basically gets us the mindset of saying, if we want to improve something, first we have to measure it, because you can't improve what you can't measure, right? If you don't know where you are, then you can't decide where you want to get to. Then it's using various problem solving tools, looking at processes and really tracking those metrics over time. So that from a mindset perspective, and that's for manual business processes, as well as, frankly, I'd like to see processes go through that first before we go apply technology to them. Because if you have a bad process and you apply new technology to it, you just get bad faster, right?
Yep.
And that's not always what you're shooting for. So we want to be saying, okay, well, how do we look at the future state of what this technology should be, and what the future state of what the process should be. Work on the process first, and perhaps even prototype and roll that out, perhaps with existing technology, and see if we can improve that before we go and add new technology to it.
So does your office have like standards that you follow, or does each individual team or agency kind of figure out what's best for them, and you kind of just make sure things are going well?
So the answer is a little of both, right? So when I talked about earlier about cybersecurity, we have about 15, 16 enterprise security controls that cyber command group is funded, they procure, and that are standardized across state agencies. And the reason we do that is that in order for us to understand where we are from a security posture and a risk perspective, we all need to, it's a team sport. We all have to be playing the same game, and we use the same tools to do it. We have agencies that might say, hey, I think I have a requirement that is more or in a different area. And so they have the flexibility to bring additional tools to the table. But we don't say, hey, everyone just go and figure out what you think the best, web application firewall is and go. Everyone go figure out what you think the best endpoint protection is and go. Another reason for that is that if I'm buying on behalf of 38,000 users, I get a different price than if I'm buying for 500 users.
Or that one guy in the streaming department.
One guy in the stream department who wants one license, right? So we're seeking to coordinate better, communicate better, but that's not true across the board, right? Down in the business, I want to give the business the flexibility. I'm not going to tell them, hey, you all have to use Salesforce. That's the only thing we're going to use from a platform perspective. Like, no, that's not the case. It doesn't fit everywhere. It can be a great tool. It can solve some great problems. We have some strong examples of Salesforce implementations within the state, but it's not the hammer for every nail, so to speak. So we've got a wide variety of technologies at various stages of maturity. So I guarantee you can step in and you can find some stuff like, wow, that's really old. I'm in the process, we're working on an RFP solicitation to replace the state's HR system. Well, it's been in place for more than 20 years. Lots changed over 20 years, right? So we're really looking forward to some of the benefits that we would get from a modern application and those things that are available in the market. But and that's along the same side is I have a fairly recent procurement system that is fully cloud-based, all web-based. and has been serving the state well over the past few years. So, you know, it's like you would find in many businesses, there's not unlimited dollars to modernize everything at the same time. So we're having to, you know, pick and choose as we go. You know, making sure that we try and stretch the funding, which is all of you know, our taxpayer dollars, right? We want to be good stewards of those things. We want to spend them wisely. And then you know, I think part of my job is to help the state look for solutions that are sustainable. And as I mentioned earlier, at this point, I'm looking for us to say, well, where can we go? You know, up the stack where possible. So you know, if there's a software as service solution in the market, then I probably want to go there. If not, then I'll step back to platform or infrastructure. And but there are still places where you know, there's just not a big market. If it's, you know, some things that I was talking with our game and fish department, right? So there's some very unique things that they do. And when you look at it and say, okay, well, there's only, you know, about 52, you know, states in America, right? So
Give or
it's not a
take.
big market. So for someone to create a solution, like, you know, you've got a limited market space. So, you know, there's some places where if it doesn't translate, there's not a solution provider in the market that's got something that's already built. So that's where we do need to be able to have, you know, skilled developers and or skilled partners that we work with to help us create those solutions and do that in ways that are sustainable and supportable.
It's pretty smart. I mean, at work, we always use the expression, you know, just because you have a hammer, not everything is a nail, because you don't want that. You can't be a one-stop shop. We always like to say, you know, that we, when all possible, use the right technology for the job. Sometimes it makes sense to use something existing because of knowledge and everything, but it's good to see when others are following the same thing and not just saying we are a .NET shop or we're a Drupal shop or we're a XYZ shop. Technology changes and there are too many differences across the board. One of the other things that we, you know, wanted to chat about a little bit is like, where do you see like the private sector and the public sector kind of helping together outside of, you know, obviously things like this where we're working together to try and better the workforce in Arizona?
Well, so I'll say a key area of partnership that I've watched really grow and develop over the past few years has been in the area of cybersecurity. So not too long ago, Governor Ducey made an investment and stood up, you know, an investment in what is called the ACTIC, which is the Arizona Cyber Terrorism Information Center. That's what in some states is called a fusion center. So what that means is you've got, you know, our state security folks are involved. The FBI is there. Our public safety department is there. Local law enforcement is in there. And we have private sector organizations that also participate in that. And we have, there's a Slack channel that's set up with everyone that has access. Some of the security guys are exchanging information and intelligence on a regular basis. And frankly, they're expanding that team sport out in great ways to help ensure that we protect the, you know, the data, right? Because that's the number one asset that we have as state government is we have data on pretty much everybody. In fact, more than you know, most any other type of government, because of just the number of folks that we interface with and the number of services that we can deliver. So it's imperative that we provide proper care and stewardship of that data. And the best way for us to do that is to understand that we, the state of Arizona, right? Okay, we're government, but we're part of an ecosystem. We're an ecosystem with local government agencies, whether that's the counties, the cities, and then the private sector, right? Whether you can start with at least critical infrastructure, you know, power providers, water providers, but then as you get into the, you know, local corporations, frankly, the state of Arizona does a lot of business locally. And so we want to make sure that, you know, all the vectors in the threat landscape are properly covered.
Cool. So, I mean, with this externship, we got a lot of people looking to enter the workforce, and you got a lot of different varieties as far as skill sets and experience. And it sounds like just, you know, with the state that there's lots of different options. You talked about lots of different software as a services or platform as a services. how much of that do you have your team members or employees working on? Like, do you spend a lot of time in the proverbial gluing things together, or just allowing contractors to do that? Let's walk us a little bit through, like, kind of some of that stuff, because not everything's all net new development, which they teach you in school.
So the answer is, we have everything across the spectrum, right? So in our Department of Economic Security, they have a number of modernization projects that are underway. And while they are engaging, a partner to work with them to stand up the initial solution, they're also standing up their internal practice. This one happens to be on Salesforce. So they're looking for everything from Salesforce architects down through Salesforce developers and administrators. And I think that's representative of, as we go through most anything in the state. We have shops that are more focused on Java development, and they've got, more investments in that area. So they may be looking for Java developers. We have shops that are more .NET, and will be, probably transitioning to adopt more native Azure services as they're seeking to migrate things. But we all know that some of these code bases, they don't just magically modernize overnight. And so we need folks that can understand where they are today and then take us where we need to go and help implement those sustainable architectures that allow us to better sustain those applications going forward.
I heard a theme a lot in what you were talking about, what I like to call the communicator or the translator, the person that's being able to understand the needs and the implementation, because not all the times do you get, here's exactly what I need, go build it. I mean, you're looking to solve a problem. What are the things are you kind of looking for with talent? Like resumes, I'm sure, well, maybe not at your level, come across your desk every day. What are some of the skills outside of communication that we're looking for?
So if I'll say related to technology, so beyond just raw development talent, which there's generally going to be a place for that.
Mhm.
Other skills that folks can roll into. So I'd say technical project management. We've got, we have teams that have adopted or in the process of adopting agile methodologies. So things like Scrum Masters and or team leads. I think strong technical business analysts. There's plenty of opportunity to step in there, and that's a great place to hone your business to technology translation skills, is having to interface with the business, gather requirements, and then go sit with the developers, translate those requirements into whether it's a business requirement document or a technical requirements document, and watch that whole development lifecycle occur. Bring that back to your users and see whether you got it right.
That's the hard part, right?
Well, that's where again we're really are encouraging and have seen the state adopt much more. And in new projects that we're doing, we're really encouraging agile methodologies, regardless of the technology underneath. Why? Because that rapid iteration, right? That opportunity to bring forward a minimum viable product, get that in front of the users, get their feedback, and then start to iterate on it. That's tremendously valuable, and it helps to ensure. I mean, because the days of Joe, tell me what you want from the application, and we spend hours and hours, and you articulate all the things, and I write them all down, and I think I understand what you meant, and then I go build something and bring it back, and and we're 2 minutes in, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. And it's not just, we disagreed on the color of blue.
Yeah, well, we use Agile too where we are. And I think, some of the biggest wins, like you said, is, making sure you have that constant feedback loop. But a lot of times, especially within software and business, it's constantly changing. We can no longer wait for here's a list of requirements, come back in 12 months with the solution, because the business might change at that point. And it makes total sense to do iterative 2-week iterations. Here, let's try this, get that software in front of a end user, because nothing nothing shows better than, getting that software. You can talk theory all you want, write on napkins, draw up screens on a whiteboard until someone's actually using it and testing it. One of the other things we found, one of the things we do in technology in our group to help with that, outside of the agile development, is after we write software, a lot of times within our group, this is free advice, take it for what you want, we actually send some of our engineers in with the business and watch them use the product to see where they're struggling, what they like, what they dislike, if they're skipping buttons, so that we know, hey, maybe we need to do something with that button, or maybe we need to tweak this process a little bit. Because a lot of times, users will know what to tell you, what not to tell you.
No, I think that's awesome. And we have cases, I won't say it happens everywhere, but there are, some of the better projects I see have that kind of practice, right? Because you will build something and you may be surprised at how your users, what they try and do with it, or how they interpret, the design that you put together. And we're starting to see more and more of the importance of including, UX and user experience in the design process. And that whole process of, user journey mapping and those types of things.
Yeah, I had an old manager that would tell me, when we wanted to test something, give it to your mother and see how she would handle it, see what she would break, see what she would like, because it's, typical user. Not that my mother was a typical user by any means. So we got a couple minutes left before we turn it over to the people that are here to ask questions. One last question I have for you right now is, if you were one of the externs right now, what would you do to try and get ready?
So first off, I think you approach this with the idea that, first get in, right? Don't worry if the thing that you're reading about sounds like the ultimate thing, because the fact is once you hit the ground and you're inside the organization, there's a bunch to learn when you get there, but you will start meeting people. And as you meet those people and you're starting to be able to ask questions about the things that you're interested in, and you'll see other opportunities, that provides additional pathways for you. Then the other thing is, as you're engaging in that externship, I'll say, work it like it's the job you want to have, because people are going to be paying attention. And I'll tell you that, I've used, I'll say a similar approach, not externships, but I'll call it, we've used in my organization sometimes what we call contract to hire. Well, we'll go out to a staffing agency, and because sometimes roles can be difficult to fill, or being able to try out the team fit, right? It's a two-way trial. And it's important that the person coming in have the opportunity, and the team has the opportunity. And so with the externship, I'd say look at that as well, right? So this is your chance to learn about yourself, learn about the organization. And once you're working in one part of state government, you may find connections to other parts of state government, right? I mean, there are, like I said, there's 38,000 employees and 100 different places that you can do things. So, those relationships that you'll gain, as well as the work experience. One of the things I can tell you is that you can expect to come in, and depending upon the part of government you drop into, you may be able to start working along folks at the size and scale that would take you years to get to in the private sector before someone would entrust you with that. Now, when I say that, like, we're not just going to throw you to the wolves. Basically, we want to walk with you and give you opportunities to be successful, but not leave you on your own. So, I've had some great experience with interns within my organization. I know a number of other agencies that have had great experience with interns that developed into long-term employees. And so I'd say just, mindset is everything as you're stepping into it. Come to this, like I guarantee you will gain some good experience. I hope from a, both a technology perspective, but a business process perspective, and that you'll learn something about government, where I think coming back to where we started, Joe, in terms of like what's it like to work in government, that you'll have a greater appreciation for the work that's being done, some of the challenges that are in place, which I'll say where government moves slow, frankly, government is designed not to change. Right? I mean, that's how laws work. They're hard to put in place. They're hard to change. But that's good because too much change too quick can have some really erratic results. But from a technology perspective, technology is not political. Technology is how we support the mission of the organizations and how we ultimately deliver our services. And I can tell you that technology is in pretty much every part of the business, even the guys that are going out and inspecting cattle, right? They're starting to carry tablets with them. So, it's how we get our work done. And we need folks that come with the energy and enthusiasm and creativity to think about how we do it different and better.
Cool. And I might disagree with you that the technology is not political. You start talking to someone about AWS versus Azure or Java versus
that's religious. That's religion. And like I said earlier, we at the state we're not committed to just one. You may find that depending upon the organization you drop into, they might have an affinity or more investments in one cloud or provider or another. And that can be part of what interests you. But another thing that you can expect with an externship in the state is that the state is going to invest in you. We're going to provide that, if there's training that you need in order to execute on the position that you've been hired for, then you're going to get that. You're going to get that training, and you're going to get again the opportunity to show what you got.
Cool. Well, we have a little bit over 15 minutes left. Want to make sure that there's time for anyone to ask any questions. So if you have any questions for JR or myself, feel free to unmute and ask away. And we'll give the awkward 30 seconds to 60 seconds for someone to build up enough courage to unmute and go. This is where we play Jeopardy music or something, or maybe Eye of the Tiger to get the adrenaline going, get someone to want to come up and say something.
Hello.
There we go.
Hi, my name is Italo. I would like to ask, which challenges do you face, in your daily activities, with technology and with business decisions?
Joe, you want to take that one? Then I'll answer.
Sure. My daily challenges, most of my time is actually spent what I call peopling, and that's trying to make sure that team member A is getting along with team member B or handling people's vacation time or stuff. From a technology standpoint, I think the biggest challenge is trying to keep up with the latest and greatest, so I can, as JR was mentioning, be able to have the conversations with both the business and my teams, because a lot of times I play the intermediary between them, and I feel as I need to be able to talk semi-intelligently about the topics, and that and keeping our systems up near 24/7 for some of the stuff I work on, because if one of my systems are down, my organization is losing money by the minute. So I have to keep the stuff that I support up 24/7.
So the way I'll answer that question is, somewhat similar, right? So one of the things that my organization is responsible for is that any IT project in the state of Arizona with a value of $25,000 or more flows through a governance process that goes through my office. So that's basically an investment justification. Think of it as like a business case for why should this project be done, And things we look for as we go through that process are things like, okay, does it align to the strategy of your agency? How does this align to the statewide technology strategy? We look for some of the technology choices that are being made inside that. And then we also then track that project to ensure its success. And that's where I spend a good amount of my time or not just my time, but my organization's time is working with agencies on their projects, seeking to help them if they get off track, maybe bringing other resources to bear. And I always love getting the opportunity to see them be successful and then help celebrate that across the organizations. But I'll say as you move up in management or leadership and technology, as Joe indicated, you spend a lot more time understanding that, hey, it's all about people, and people is how things happen, and we get our work done through people, and it's people at the end that are our users, it's people in the middle that are implementing and supporting, it's people that are delivering. And so it's, people is a lot of it. And that includes the relationships we have with outside vendors, partners, and the contracts that support those as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Actually, you'll see part of that in our Rocket Mortgage presentation later on, if you're here. Any other questions we have?
This is Maria, and I have a question. I really appreciate your what you said about translating business into technology. Could you speak more about that? I'd love to learn more. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I mean, the whole area of business analysis, when it comes down to, I'll say, I think a popular approach is you'll say, people, process, then technology. Understand what the people are doing and what needs to happen, the current processes as well as future processes, and then you can start to look for the technology solutions that overlay that. For where I see a lot of stuff in state government, like generally there's something that's already established. There's not a lot of what I would call net new ground. It does come up. Sometimes that might be through legislation that says, hey, we have to provide a new service, or we have to change how we're doing something. But a lot of stuff, there's processes that are in place. And what I'll tell you I find today, as we go into agencies, there's processes have been built around legacy technologies that stopped serving the needs of the business. Then new other technologies, or that were modern at the time, were bolted on around the old technologies. And ultimately you ended up with this, kind of stitched together, business process.
Frankenstein process.
Yeah. And I think that's, you probably can find that in almost any organization, right? And so the opportunity for us is to then have the right people come in that understand business process, first and foremost, that understand lean management principles. So that can be, training in Six Sigma, that can be training in lean, what that would be like Toyota, the Toyota system. Which would be lean manufacturing principles, but then applying those to understand what the value stream is, right? And in that process, where is value added and where is it not added? Helping that organization come out with a future state process that is both efficient, meets the needs of the business, and then we can apply technology to it, right? And so that part of being able to understand the business process, help them optimize it, help them catch the vision for what's possible, and the art of the possible with technology. But sometimes they don't even know, right, that something can be done with technology. And there's so much on the forefront now. I'll say there was another state that implemented a solution in their Department of Child Protective Services. And they were struggling with hiring people, but then having them, leave the organization quickly. And they didn't, they're trying to understand why that was happening. And they ultimately found out that in their hiring process, people didn't really understand what it was going to be like to go out as a caseworker and walk into the homes where some of these, kids are placed, and what the environment's going to be like for them as a caseworker. Well, they ultimately developed a solution that was a virtual reality solution. So you have the VR goggles, And as a caseworker, you could literally walk in, encounter a child and their family, and walk through a case. And they actually had, various scenarios programmed in there, but they can use that as part of their recruiting process to help a potential caseworker understand what's it going to be like if I actually sign up for this job. So they've had great results with it. So I think that's a case where without somebody that had the vision to come in and say, this is possible, and to be able to take what was a business need of, how do we help people understand what it would be like, right? And then say, oh, well, there's actually a technical way to do that. So I think it's a great example of, helping the business envision something and solve a problem for them that they might not have known was even possible.
And it's pretty cool. Who would have thought that state government would have a VR as part of the interview process or everything? That's pretty neat. Any others?
Yeah, hi, my name's Paloma Greenwald. I guess I'm curious on your take of the whole interview resume process. Oftentimes, even at entry level job postings, I mean, they read like a professional football player dream sheet. So do you consider that listing to be, okay, maybe I'm 50% of what they're looking for? Is that a worthy application to pursue? Or, like every possible item needs to really be 100% competency?
So, well, I understand what you're asking. And frankly, if I was applying anywhere else, I'd have the same question, right? And I'll tell you, just based on personal experience, when possible, I think a great way to go in, if you're interested in working for an organization, use the tools that you have at your disposal to make connections with folks in that organization. And whether that's, we'll say LinkedIn, if they have a Facebook group, how can you connect with someone that works there? And then don't just stop at the connection, right? Because that's not enough. They don't really know you yet, right? So where can you actually have a potential face-to-face encounter with them? Because frankly, if I've met you, had a little bit of a conversation with you, then now I have a completely different impression. And I get, I think what you were implying is like, how do I get to the seat for the interview? I think that's the challenge everyone's trying to get over. And I'll say application and resume processes are they're imperfect. And I'll say the best leverage I think you can get is if you can get to an encounter with somebody that's in that organization, and to just be able to have a conversation with them, right? And that's another value I see in this externship program is the opportunity to get some FaceTime experience, where I think I'll say the investment is low, I think on both sides, right? In that you're getting the opportunity to get some experience with the organization, they're getting an opportunity to see you. At least with the term of an externship, the idea is that, hey, we have some valuable work that needs to get done. But we're not necessarily making what we think is a 10-year commitment. But man, once we get to know you, we're probably going to be like, how do we keep this person? How do we find a role for them to move into? And I think that's again, as I said, once you get in, navigate to see if there's an opportunity within that organization longer term, or how they can help introduce you around to other parts of the state, right? And get more connections there.
Yeah, networking is key. And one of the other things I'd like to add is, with our resumes, or at least with our interview process, we break down our required and nice to haves. We try to make the required as minimal as possible just to get that job done. 99 times out of 100, you're not going to be turned away because you're missing one of them. A lot of it's just being honest on your resume with what you do have and starting that conversation. If it's for a company that has no presence or you can't find it, talking to that recruiter and, explaining to him or her the skills you have that you can add the value. The other thing I want to add is, you have 2 weeks right now where you're meeting with a lot of different employers and hearing what they're looking for, how they talk to people, how they look at people. Ask those questions. You're already starting the first step of getting that networking out there and building those connections already. I think we have time for one more. Paul, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so you spoke since the whole conversation about like transitioning business technology and cybersecurity is also like an importance to look at. In your best opinion, since I always had like this thought of mine of could the skills and ideas of IT be applied to help improve cybersecurity, such as like programming, such as like Python or like artificial intelligence? Like could that bring a huge benefit in improving cybersecurity, or like could there be like potential risk, or like it depends on like how well you maintain that?
So, okay, I'll let me know if I answer your question, Paul. So I'm gonna take a couple different swings at it. Number one is, I talked about, continuous integration processes and DevOps processes, right? Well, that is out of date now. We need DevSecOps processes. So whatever code that we're writing, we need to have security reviews be a part of that process, and we need to be investing into our developers, teaching them how to write secure code, and then investing in those that are going to be doing the security reviews. Things like whether it's scripting languages or AI that can do analysis of code. Because one of the great things that I'll say, the scripting and AI and machine learning, right? They can go through large volumes of data quickly. They can identify patterns. There's still the place for people though, right? Because there are things that people do better than machines. But how do we get through that gross level of data analysis to then say, these are the right things, Paul, I need you to look at and determine whether this is a problem or not. So the answer is, yes, there's definitely a place for that. Now, the downside, or is there, is it if you push it too far, right? If you try to automate end to end, you're probably going to miss something, right? So it's going to be finding that right balance between where you apply automation and where you still apply people, where people skills are needed.
There's only so much.
You know what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's only so much you can automate because technology is ever changing, and cyber security is always changing too. You can automate some stuff, but eventually new things arise, new patterns arise, new threats arise. So there's always going to be humans involved in it until Skynet takes over everything. Then we got other things to worry about.
Yeah, because like that's why I always had like this thought idea, because like technology is always evolving to improve, yes, but it's also that potential threat of also threats are constantly evolving too, so that like counteracts each other.
They do to some extent. Cool. So we are just about out of time. I want to take the last couple of seconds to thank JR for being here and dedicating some time to talk to our young and up and coming externs. Any parting words outside of live long and prosper you may have to offer, JR?
We go for that.
JR, I actually have a question real quick. What was your first job?
Mowing lawns.
Mowing lawns. Okay. What were you doing right before you were going to technology?
So, so I'll say the job where I connected, to technology was actually in my father's business. He had a cabinet shop, and we manufactured cabinets that went into convenience stores. So for those of you who live in Arizona, Circle K, right? We actually supplied cabinets to Circle K as one of our customers. And in his business, he started to apply technology. We actually started building cabinets. So how many of you have built something from IKEA at some point, right? Okay, so we started using manufacturing techniques that had the same type of approach, where you basically could assemble our cabinets on site and do that efficiently. That enabled us to ship cabinets anywhere that they needed to go. Well, that equipment was all computer controlled. And another element that my father put in his business was we started to use computer aided design to lay out the stores and actually show our customers, here's what your store is going to look like once it's built. And so I got involved with the CAD design group. There was actually only 2 of us, so that was not a big group. But between the 2 of us, we would take the store, lay it out. We had in the CAD system, we built the equipment that went on the counters, the shelving. And so then, people that were wanting to invest in the community store, they actually see what the layout was going to look like, what it was going to feel like to actually be in that store. And they sold, my dad sold every single one of those that he did. But at the time, that was kind of leading edge stuff. I would start, this was simple, axonometric views. So a simple 3D view. And I would build it out, and I would say, okay, start to build a 3D view of that. And I could go and get lunch and go do a couple of other things. And, an hour or 2 later, it would be done. And this was back in the early days of, 386 processors. But I learned a lot. The first graphics card I had was like, 3 boards sandwiched together. It took up multiple slots. I learned all kinds of things about, managing the BIOS, managing RAM, the early days of DOS and Windows. So just because I was working in CAD, I had to learn all these other things about technology. That eventually, after I left that, got into a business where I was doing support. So I worked on a help desk, right? I took level 1 calls, then I took level 2 calls. Through that process, it was literally just, the opportunities get put in front of you. And frankly, at every opportunity, you're going to find there's more that you can learn, and there's someone who's willing to teach you. So take advantage of that.
Thank you, JR. I always love hearing people's career journeys, and there's so many people on the call right now who have a lot of different pathways. So I really appreciate your time. And again, thank you. If anyone wants to unmute and say thank you to JR and Joji for this discussion, I would really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Mrs.
your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Your
you.
time.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks for
very
your time
much.
today. It was great to
Thank
talk
you
with
so
you all.
much.
Thank you,
Great
JR.
advice. Very much
I know.
appreciated.
Have a good day.